It'll be a little bit different. I apologize for the format. It won't be as effective, perhaps, as it will be in the future when I'll be presenting the material live and you will be able to ask questions or get clarifications. As a result, I chose to talk about two of the simpler, more direct item types today. That way, when we get to the more complex items, I'll be there and we'll be able to go through it in a more interactive style. That being said, the two items that I chose to talk about today are items of significance. They cover the majority of the test. Specifically, we're talking about the vocabulary items and the factual information question items. Vocabulary items for this particular test, there were 12 across the three passages, and factual information questions, there were 10, 11, which meant that over 50% of the questions on the reading test were these two types of questions. If you're not doing well on these two types of questions, you're going to struggle on the test. First, we'll talk about vocabulary questions. With vocabulary, of course, the best option would be for your vocabulary to be as big and as flexible as possible. And that way you don't have to do a lot of thinking or taking time on these questions. You know the word that it's asking you to recognize and the other words that share meaning with that word. And you can answer it quickly. If you don't know the word, it's still important that you answer the question quickly, that you're not taking a lot of time to look at the paragraph or trying to divine what you think it will mean. Make a choice. Use some of the strategies that we'll talk about, but make your selection quickly and move forward. If you don't know the word, spending a lot of time looking at it is not going to help. All right, for this first question, the word that's targeted is often maybe more complex because of the different derivations. A derivation is a change in the word, and so if you back out of those changes, it can help you be a little bit more direct. For example, with persuasively, it's an adverb. It's related to the adjective persuasive, which is related to the verb persuade. Persuasively might be intimidating or it might be less familiar to you because of its formation, but the verb persuade could be more known to you. Not surprisingly, kind of the same derivational format of the word that's being targeted is the correct answer, which is convincingly. Convincingly as an adverb is related to convincing, which is an adjective, which is related to convince, which is a verb. Convince and persuade are related in meaning, therefore persuasively and convincingly are related in meaning. All of these other three choices, none of them go back to verbs. They go back only as far as adjectives, which gives you one more commonality between persuasively and convincingly. The phrase prior to, the answer choices, the correct answer choice is usually a higher frequency word, meaning less academic word that shares meaning with the word that's being targeted. So a good strategy if you're not familiar with the word or you can't see an immediate connection between the answer choices and the word is to think, what other words do I know or that maybe look familiar or seem to function in the same way as this word that's being targeted. In this case, previous, prior. If I can make that connection, it won't be hard for me to see the connection between before and previous. All right, kind of the inverse strategy here is to look at the answer choices. The answer choices are going to be higher frequency words in most cases, and if they're not, then they're likely not the correct answer. So I look at the word and I think, what other kind of words do I have to know for each of these words? If a word doesn't have a lot of options in terms of other words that mean the same thing, it's probably not the correct answer. It's probably too specific to be correct. So for example, with frozen, I can't really think of other words that are related in meaning to frozen. Maybe icy, But other than that, there's not a lot. With various and isolated, those two words are already pretty academic. I can't think of a lot of other academic words or more academic words that are related in meaning, but I looked some up. None of them seem to match. When I got to huge, the word huge has a lot of different words that share meaning with it. Something simple like large or big, and then more precise as we look at it, enormous or vast. And vast in this case ends up being the correct answer. Here with this word inhospitable, again, we look at word parts and see a couple of things that are telling. So once I take out this word part in, I'm left with hospitable. Maybe that's familiar to you. If not, maybe if we look at other forms of the word like hospitality or hospital, that might be helpful to us. That certainly doesn't sound like dangerous or familiar. Something that is hospitable is something that has the things that a person needs, like a hospital has the things that people need, or it's going to take care of them. In that case, suitable, meaning that it has the things that you need, is the correct answer. Justified, again, with these adjective words or the past tense verbs, it's helpful if you back them out of that form and look at them in more of the basic form of the word, which in this case is to justify. And you'll do the same thing with your answer choices. So instead of thinking in terms of supported, which would maybe be a less familiar form, or shaped as a less familiar form, you're going to look at the more familiar form, which is just the basic form. So to justify something is most related in meaning to support something. We talk about justifying your answer when you're writing an essay. In that case, we're talking about supporting your answer when you're writing an essay. Maybe the word is really not familiar to you. Try saying the word out loud, like with the word flourish. Flourish. Does that have kind of a positive sound to the word, or does it have a negative connotation to the word? This kind of sense or feeling comes only with time and practice, but you'll start to sense certain sounds that are common in positive meaning words and other sounds that are more common with negative sounding words. Really soft sounds are more common in positive words. Harder, harsher sounds, consonant sounds, are more common in negative words. So for me, the word flourish sounds positive. It actually sounds really positive. It has kind of a dramatic quality to it. Flourish. So if I look at the answer choices and I think, which of these words sounds the most positive and still has the other characteristics I'm looking for, a word that has other words that mean the same thing, that's maybe not as academic, I come to the answer choice succeed, which in this case is the correct answer choice. Here, compelling. Compelling is an adjective that's made from a verb. The answer should look familiar to you. Persuasively, from the very first screen, is the word that you should be thinking of with compelling. Again, when I look at it in the verb form, the word that's being targeted is compelling. It's derived from a verb by adding ing. Answer choices. Persuasive is an adjective that's derived from a verb by adding ive or siv. So in that connection, in addition to what they mean, there's a relationship between those two words. Here's another, in this case, a phrase. It demonstrates something to look out for. At random, if I want to tell someone what something that is random is, I'll usually use a negated phrase to do that. Something is that is random does not have a pattern. So with answer choices that kind of suddenly use the negation form and they're singularly negated, that can be a signal that that is the correct answer. Something to look for is that one answer choice that has a negation. Something about that should maybe stand out to you. So in this case, something that happens at random happens without a pattern or without a definite pattern. Abundantly, again, looking at the derivation of it, abundantly is an adverb. It comes from the adjective abundant, which comes from the noun abundance. So looking for a word that comes back to a noun from an adjective or from an adverb can be helpful. In this case, something that is abundant also, again, has kind of a quality of positivity to me. So as we look at the other answer choices, plentiful and fortunately definitely have a positive quality to them. Occasionally and usefully are more neutral to me, so maybe those can be eliminated. Plentiful comes all the way back to plenty, a noun, where I have to make some other structural changes with fortunately to get back to the noun form of fortune. So again, looking at different forms of the verb, also thinking in terms of kind of the positive sound qualities of a word can be useful. With the word propagate, if I look at my answer choices here, say I'm not familiar with propagate, I've never heard it before. The words that I have heard before, multiply and live, that probably means these words are less academic. If I don't know the word propagate, the word emerge and evolve are probably also unfamiliar to me. So I'm immediately going to remove them for being too technical. Again, my answer choices are probably going to be my more common words. If I'm guessing between the less common words, multiply and live is my better choice. In this case, the correct answer is multiply. We're now going to look at the factual information questions, give you some strategies on how to approach them. A few reminders about how we recognize these questions. They always point us towards a specific paragraph, and there's often in the rest of the question some very specific details that we can use as focus phrases. It's important that we don't look at the answer choices before we go back to the paragraph. The answer choices were made to distract or confuse us. So we want to make sure that we understand the facts from the reading passage well before we get confused by the different answer choices. So the first thing that I'm going to do is really just focus on the question and then take that question back to the paragraph before I look at the answer choices. Here in the question itself, there's this phrase that to me stands out, an ice-free corridor. We use that as a focus phrase, something that we'll look for in the paragraph to kind of direct our thinking and comprehension to the right part of the paragraph. If you notice, the ice-free corridor, it occurs here in the reading paragraph as well. So I use my reading skill of scanning to look for my focus phrase to find the part of the paragraph that the correct answer is and understand that part. But belief in this ice-free corridor began to crumble when paleoecologist Glenn MacDonald demonstrated that some of the most important radiocarbon dates used to support the existence of an ice-free corridor were incorrect. Boy, that's a lot of information, right? It does look like it's the right information, though. The theory is related to belief. This idea of called into question is related to began to crumble. So I'm looking at when did this happen? Well, it happened when this guy found that these dates, radiocarbon dates, were incorrect. So belief that the ice sheets block travel decreased when research showed that dates used were not correct. Once I understand this idea, then I can go back to my answer choices, and I'm just looking for the answer choice that best summarizes this information. So when I go through that, which of the answer choices talks about dates or radiocarbon dates? This answer choice here. None of the other answer choices talk about dates, so I don't even need to read them very carefully. I know that they are not correct and that B is the correct answer. Again, with question 5 from passage 1, we look at the question first, then go to the paragraph, look for a focus phrase to find where in the paragraph the correct answer is, summarize the statement, maybe rephrase the statement, and then take it back to the answer choices. So here, paragraph 2 supports the idea that before the 1970s, most archaeologists held which of the following views about the earliest people to reach the Americas? Focus phrase before the 1970s, found it here until the early 1970s. Again, not exact same words, but same ideas. Most archaeologists, again, were still looking correct, did not consider the coast was possible as a route to the Americas because it was believed to be covered by ice. So to kind of summarize those ideas, researchers didn't believe that people had come to Americas by the coast in boats because it was covered in ice. So my answer choice needs to talk about that particular idea. Taking that summary statement back to the answer choices, which of these talk about travel by boats? The correct answer choice needs to talk about boat travel, and possibly because of ice. Well, a couple of these answer choices talk about ice, right? This one here and this one here. They could not have sailed because ice covered the reason. This one, it talks about ice, but it talks about ice melting first. And that seems to be more specific information than from the paragraph. So A is the correct answer. It's most connected to this statement here that we summarized. This is a great question demonstrating using the focus phrases to eliminate the parts of the paragraph that are not useful to you in finding the correct answer. So the discovery of large land animals supports by providing evidence that, well, let's look for large land animals. It's here, right? It gives us a little bit more information about which animals we're looking for, brown bears. We then take that and use it as a focus phrase to scan down to here. Let's look at the sentence that the focus phrase is contained in. If the environment were capable of supporting populations of bears, there would have been enough food to support humans. So again, to summarize that, if bears had enough food, then humans would have had enough food. So we're going to look for an answer choice that talks about both animals and humans, both bears and humans having what they need to survive. So it supports the coastal hypothesis, saying that humans would have been able to find enough resources, including food, along the coastal corridor. C is the correct answer. Okay, question here, focus phrase. First, colonization of America, we use that to go track down, going over information that might distract us, right? Here, first human colonization occurred possibly as early as 14,000 years ago. So when did the first colonization, when was the date for that? Well, it's as possibly as early as 14,000 years ago. Taking that to our answer choices, immediately we're able to choose answer choice B, 14,000 years ago. If we hadn't used our focus phrase, we might have been more confused and spent time trying to eliminate these other dates. Okay, now from the second reading passage. According to paragraph 1, it was believed that reflection could help teachers. So that's our focus phrase. Found it. Reflective practice could help teachers feel more intellectually involved in their role and work and help them cope with the problems of teaching. So reflective practices could help teachers improve their relationships with their jobs or how they thought about their jobs. Okay, again, my summary statement now I take to the answer. Which answer choice best connects to my summary statement? This idea of relationship with connection, improve with strengthen. So B is the correct answer. Here, according to paragraph 2, Wildman and Niles worried, that's my focus phrase, need to be prepared for even the focus phrase to be expressed in a way that's similar but not exactly the same. In this case, Wildman and Niles can be reduced down to the pronoun they, and instead of worried, I use concerned. So they were concerned about what? Well, that many, meaning many teachers, would be drawn to these thoughts about teaching only to find that the gap or the separation between the thought and their reality as a teacher is too great. So again, to simplify and summarize, they were worried that teachers wouldn't find these ideas applied very well to the realities of teaching. Taking my summary statement here, looking at it compared to the different answer choices. Answer choice B best connects to this idea of an application between the ideas and the situation of teaching. About plant life in Hawaii. According to paragraph 3, what was the relationship between lichens and ferns? These two focus phrases are split. So we've got lichens here and ferns here. Let's look at what it says between them. Lichens help to speed the decomposition of rock, preparing soil. Now that there was soil, other forms of life could take hold, including ferns. So lichens created soil. This allowed other life, including ferns, to grow. Which answer choice best matches this? It's important to know that order can vary and meaning stays the same. So ferns were able to grow because lichens created suitable soil. So if you could match this one to this one, you probably got that correct. Final question for today. According to paragraph 5, a major reason that coconuts can establish themselves in distant locations is that their seeds can Focus phrase, coconuts here, and seeds. Large, buoyant, which means they can float, seeds. Drift on ocean currents, which means they can travel long areas, including surviving saltwater. So coconuts are large and float, which allows them to travel on ocean currents without being harmed. They can survive a long time in the ocean. And of our summary statement, which answer choice best matches? Float, survive, long periods in ocean water. B is our correct answer. So there you have it, 2 question types from last week's practice test, vocabulary and factual information questions. I hope that some of what we said and discussed will be helpful for you as you rethink your strategies and how you approach these questions. Again, nothing can replace study when it comes to learning and expanding your vocabulary. Being flexible in your vocabulary is not only necessary on the vocabulary questions, but on these other questions where you show your comprehension through being able to restate or see restatements of ideas from the paragraphs in the answer choices that are needed. Again, in the future, these post-test sessions will be more specific, more direct, and of course, more interactive. But hopefully, whatever you were able to watch was useful to you. This Thursday and Friday, you'll be doing the second half of practice test 1, the speaking and the writing section. So come prepared to your test group time to complete that test. It will be a little bit shorter than the reading and listening test. It will take approximately 90 minutes instead of the 2 hours that the reading listening session requires. Have a great week.